Hi YouTube, welcome back. I hope you're having a great week so far. It's been a really busy one for me, but one of those weeks where I've really just felt like I'm in my rhythm with things like training, but also really with like work. I'm kind of in a bit of a work sprint at the moment, which I absolutely love. The energy that gives me is just second to none. I hope you've had a good one as well. I was actually asking on my Instagram this week what people were wanting to actually hear from me on. Lots of different topics and lots of different kind of subcategories within that. And one of the most popular ones was actually quite surprising to me. It was kind of more of a personal take on fitness and kind of how I balance life with my fitness goals and my fitness priorities. And I guess I wanted to start this one with a bit of context and a bit more maybe about me and my general approach to fitness, right? I am a personal trainer, I am a coach, I take that very seriously. I absolutely think you should walk the walk to a degree. Like if you're encouraging people to regularly exercise, regularly strength train, take care of their bodies nutritionally most of the time, then you really should be practicing some of those behaviors, or else there's something probably wrong, right? Like there's a disconnect somewhere. If you're not doing what you're trying to get other people to do, then there's something amiss there. Whilst I definitely do take that seriously, and therefore fitness is a part of my life, it really is like just a part. I think people will often imagine if you're a personal trainer or you're in the fitness industry and that's your career path, that might mean that fitness is this huge section of the way you live your life. And a lot of the decisions that you make are based around fitness. But at least in my experience, that really isn't the case. And I actually don't see that as a weakness or something that I need to change, because when I think about the people that I'm trying to help, one of the things that makes me a good coach, in my view, is I'm a normal person. And what I mean by that is I have loads of other priorities within my life. Fitness adds to my life. Being fit and strong and healthy adds to my life, but it's certainly not something that consumes it. And really, that is quite literally what I would like everybody that works with me to be able to do in their own lives. Have fitness as something that is a net positive rather than something that feels massively overwhelming or that you need to dedicate your entire existence to it. Now, clearly there are some goals out there that do require a pretty intense level of dedication. Everything needs to be measured and managed, right? Things like competitive bodybuilding, for example. If you are prepping to stand up on stage and you're wanting to kind of pursue that competitive avenue as something that you're really passionate about, then in those instances, yes, you may need to be the person that Tupperwares your meals and takes them out to dinner with your friends. You may need to be the person that takes some weighing scales around with them and measures out what you're eating when you're not at home. That might sound insane, but that is the reality if competing is something that's on your radar. But for the average Joe, and I would absolutely put myself in that category, you definitely don't need to be taking things to that kind of extreme. And if you feel like food and fitness is at the forefront of your mind at all times, then that's probably not the best way to make fitness actually work for you and be that net positive that I was just talking about. So with that little preface over, I thought I'd go into how fitness has kind of evolved for me over the years, where I have been and where I am now. Honestly, there definitely was a time in my life where fitness was quite all-consuming. And actually it happened pretty soon after I got a little more serious about the gym. So I started to go fairly regularly. And once I'd built that solid consistency, the transition into, God, how much more can I do was quite quick. And I then found myself trying to add in a fifth, a sixth session, adding cardio in after my training sessions, going to classes, trying to run, adding in all of these things, thinking more must be better. If I just do a bit more, then maybe my progress will be quicker. And similarly, or kind of the opposite, I suppose, with nutrition, it was more about how can I get away with eating a little bit less so that my overall calories are lower, therefore pushing me into a deficit? I see some fat loss. When I think about that through these eyes, right now, 2025 Emily, I can see how those two things are actually working in opposition to each other. Doing loads and loads of movement without real structure or strategy and trying to limit intake via food clearly weren't going to get me to where I wanted to be, which inevitably was lean, strong, toned, healthy. And interestingly, outside of my, say, Monday to Thursday life, which was very much focused around those two things, my Friday to Sunday life would look a lot more like binge drinking and going to bed at 2 a.m. and not managing my stress whatsoever, not paying any attention to sleep, eating takeaways the entire weekend because it was the weekend. So although I was almost uber dedicated back then, I also kind of swung way too far the other way when it came to the weekends and kind of social events in general. And this is something that I see a lot when people start working with me initially. Like, they're already working really, really hard. They're already doing a lot of the right stuff, or at least the right stuff on the surface. But then you dig a little deeper and it can often be coming from a place of fear. I need to move more, I need to eat less in order to get to where I want to be. And then kind of total disregard come the weekend and it all just be baby out with the bathwater. I would say a couple of years in, I started to think, I'm not actually feeling that great. In terms of physique, that's a side point, but more so just within myself, I was like, this isn't really serving me. I am permanently exhausted, permanently sore. I've got a real preoccupation with nutrition, numbers, tracking, staying under this invisible ceiling that I'd created for myself when it comes to overall calorie intake each day. And that switch from Sunday into Monday was always the starkest. You'd go from like going out for a roast dinner, having a bottle of wine, eating some chocolate on the sofa Sunday night, happy as Larry, to Monday morning telling yourself you can only have a piece of dry toast and a black coffee because you've really been a pig over the weekend. Even just that small example, you can probably see why eventually that caught up. And I just knew that something had to change, something was wrong. I wasn't moving in the right direction. I wasn't feeling great, I wasn't looking great. Fast forwarding to now, or present day, after a lot of trial and error, and also after years of really educating myself on what actually worked for me, and also the actual science behind it, what is most effective. If I'm going to be spending hours of my life each week in the gym, I better make sure that what I'm doing is worthwhile. If I'm going to be spending all of this time thinking about my nutrition, again, it better be actually serving me and it not just be restriction under the guise of hoping that it gets me to a better position. I'd say I'm now comfortably in a position where I know exactly what I will do each and every week as my non-negotiables. And I really know what that balance is between just enough and too much. And also I think it's important to say that it's not like now I'm just that little bit older and therefore I don't necessarily go out with my friends. I don't have takeaways. I do all of that stuff. Like, I really do still genuinely think those things also add to my life. If they weren't adding to my life, I will have eased them out. But at this stage, right now, where I'm at is I still love a glass of wine. I still love a pizza. I guess when it comes to that, thinking about balancing life and fitness, it really is about having it all. For me anyway, it's about having it all, but in the right moderation. And that applies to both the good in terms of workouts, nutrition, etc., and also the bad. And arguably my life is busier now than it was then. I now run my own business. I've got a wedding to plan. I have a really busy social life, a really busy work life. There's 1,000 tabs open in my brain at any one time. Overall, when it comes to thinking about balance as a concept, balance for me is about knowing what my priorities are in every season. And I don't mean like the traditional seasons. I mean your life seasons. What is happening for you at any given moment. There will be, and there are absolutely some weeks where training is right at the top of that priority list. There are others where I'm just so busy with work that training has to take a bit of a back seat. There will be weekends where it's my friend's birthday, or it's a hen do, or it's a party. And in those scenarios, that is the thing that will take priority. Now, regardless of what season I'm in, I will always make sure that I have some non-negotiables that I will always stick to. And when I say always, I obviously don't mean if I'm ill or I'm on holiday or like I'm basically unable to stick to that routine for a fundamental reason. But just not feeling like it doesn't count as one of them. Those non-negotiables for me are 3 to 4 strength sessions every single week. Not optional, but flexible. If I need to move them, I will, but I will always get them done. If I'm low on time, I'll do shorter sessions. If I've had a bad night's sleep, I might drop the intensity a little bit, but I will always show up because that is a priority and a non-negotiable regardless of the season. Weeks where everything's perfect, I'll get 4 done. I'll tick off every exercise. I'll make every rep count. Weeks where it's a little bit more crazy, I'll do 3. They might be 20 minutes and I may not have even broken a sweat. The point is I'm staying in the routine. I'll also make sure that I do some form of daily movement and I do track my steps. Wearing an Apple Watch or some sort of wearable makes it much easier. For me, it's something that I'll always have a half an eye on. For me, that non-negotiable is 8,000. I know categorically that there is no reason why I can't get that number of steps in each and every day, even if I'm sat at this desk for most of it. I will literally put little reminders in my calendar on a really busy work day to get up and walk. I might get up a bit early on my rest day rather than going to the gym and doing a 20-minute walk around the block. And to be clear, this isn't steps for the sake of steps. I'm not watching my watch until it gets to 8,000 and then immediately sitting down. For me, daily movement, and the most easy and accessible form of that is walking, helps me so much in terms of that mental clarity. And also, there has never been a 3 p.m. slump that I've never been able to beat without just going out for a quick walk and clearing your head. It makes an enormous difference. And keeping this as a constant actually makes it so much easier. If you go through weeks of being really sedentary and then overnight decide you're going to be doing 10,000 steps a day, that's going to feel like a lifestyle overhaul. It's something I bedded in years ago, and it is not something that I am considering changing at any point soon. And you might be thinking, why 8,000? Why not 10? Just because 8,000 is realistic for me on my busiest days. There are plenty of days that I get more than that, of course. But again, I'm giving myself a goal that's actually realistic. And when it comes to nutrition, I kind of anchor myself around 2 main principles. One being eating 4 meals a day. That just works for me. I know that I'm hungry every 3 to 4 hours. If I wake up at 6 and go to bed at 9, then I need to eat 4 times a day. And with each of those meals, I'll make sure they're based around protein and colour. Some source of protein, be that Greek yogurt or meat or fish, and then some sort of colour like veg or fruit or salad. Sometimes it's really hearty and wholesome, a proper sit-down meal, and other times it's a protein shake and a handful of berries. I do what I can in the moment, but the structures are the thing that anchor me. Outside of that, literally everything else can just ebb and flow around how busy or how time-free I am. Enough about my gym and eating habits during the working week, because that sounds quite boring. I guess the main thing that we're wanting to look at here, when we're talking about how do you balance fitness and real life, I guess what most people are thinking about here is the fun stuff. We're talking about weekends, holidays, weddings, etc. And as I've said, I am certainly not a no fun coach. I really think the main difference here is I just genuinely do not see these scenarios as being off track. I think the on-off track thinking literally helps nobody. And again, because I'm kind of talking about myself today, I'm going to approach this through the lens of someone who is not currently in a diet, who is eating at maintenance, and just really training for life. And seeing as that is my current goal, I'm not going to be making different decisions when we're thinking about going out to dinner or going out for a few drinks than anybody else. I'm not looking at the menu beforehand. I'm not choosing a diet-friendly option at dinner. I'm going for that calorie-dense cocktail if that's what I fancy at the time. There is no trade-off in my mind during those moments. If I was in a diet phase, sure, I'd approach that differently. I would be trying to plan ahead where I can, making the most sensible decisions possible. But for me, because I'm not out every night of the week, in fact, it's probably more like once a week that I'll eat out or go out for a few drinks, It's just not something that I need to consider all that much. The trade-off isn't worth it for me in this current season. I'll make the decision I want to make in the moment, and I'll give no thought whatsoever to my fitness life whilst I'm doing that. These are the things that I will do, however. And I can't lie and say that I do this 100% of the time, but it is probably 95. Over the years, I have gotten so much better at knowing when to call it. For me, I know I'm an early riser, regardless of when I go to bed. If I went to bed at 2 a.m, I would still be up at 6. That is just the way my body and my brain works, unfortunately. I've tried to change it. It just seems to be my natural waking time. With that in mind, if I don't want to feel like shit for 3 days after, I will almost always call it by 11 o'clock, in bed by 12. The next day, if I'm hungover, I will get up and I will go for a walk. Again, this helps my mind. I find that alcohol often gives me anxiety the next day. Nothing like a good walk in nature, ideally, to just really clear your mind and make you feel better. I also won't let whatever happened the day before bleed into the next day. So usually I'll do my food shop online. That will be delivered on a Sunday, so I already know that's happening. Good food is arriving. I will cook something really nice and hearty, not particularly calorie controlled, but just some veg, some protein, the basics. And I'll do a little bit of prep for the week ahead. Nothing major. If I really can't be asked, it will literally be cooking up a couple of sources of protein, just so that they're cooked and ready to go. I also aim to not let social events bleed into the day before either. And I kind of mean this both ways. I don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm going out tonight, so I better not eat much today, and therefore restrict as much as I can. In fact, I'll do the opposite. I'll make sure, say we've got dinner at 7, I'm having a snack at 5. Simply because I don't like feeling really hungry. And I know that if I turn up at dinner absolutely ravenous, then it's inevitable, I'm going to eat past fullness. I'm going to be really uncomfortable. I'm going to be undoing my top button. I'm going to be wishing I'd have stopped 10 minutes ago. For me, having something before, a couple of hours before, really does just help to be really mindful and present and actually enjoy the moment, enjoy the people, enjoy the atmosphere, rather than thinking, my God, I'm so fucking hungry. Equally, I don't wake up on Friday morning knowing I'm going out that night and thinking, well, I may as well just have whatever I want right now because I'm going out tonight, so I'm going to ruin it anyway. I genuinely think a lot of the problems that people have when it comes to balancing life with fitness is it comes back to all or nothing. And it just doesn't need to be. Coming back to that concept of seasons, I also think it's important to accept, depending on where your priorities are lying, that there will be times of the year where you might be just a little more fun focused than others. Right now, life's pretty quiet, but I've still got social things happening. I still probably have at least one thing a week where food or drink is going to be involved under that fun umbrella, rather than it being health focused. But compared to the summer, there was barely a week that went by where there wasn't a hen do or a wedding or a birthday or some sort of celebration. Again, just understanding and acknowledging that there will be different times for different priorities and accepting that you might look and feel slightly different in those seasons as a result. That is a huge part of the process. And finally, when we talk about that balance, I think it's really important to understand that we do need an element of boundaries and flexibility. Those two words may not chime with balance immediately, but what I mean by that is doing things like scheduling in your workouts as time for you. They are boundaries that you absolutely want to take seriously. They are just as important as that work meeting that you have at 4 o'clock. That's honestly how I see it. Trying to protect your evenings or weekends when you know that you need rest, saying no to things. Like, all of this feeds in to how we're able to balance both fitness and our well-being with what I guess we mean by real life, which is basically fun, everything else. And then also permission, right? Like giving yourself permission to skip a session if you are absolutely exhausted, and giving yourself permission to enjoy those moments, those meals out, drinks with friends, without that crippling guilt and feeling like you need to start again on Monday. And all of that boils down to self-trust, knowing that you can trust your judgment, that when you give yourself that day off because you're exhausted, it's because you're exhausted and you need it. It's not you just making another excuse. And building that self-trust and therefore finding that balance is where real sustainability comes from. Not rigid rules, but a flexible structure that moves with your life. It really comes down to me training and eating well for life, to prepare me best for life. Not for a phase or a photo shoot or a wedding, but because it makes me feel stronger, calmer, more confident, and more like me. And if you really feel like you're struggling to balance it all, remember that you really don't need perfect discipline. You just need some daily decisions that align with your values. How do you want to feel? How do you want to show up? Who do you want to be? And you absolutely don't need to be all or nothing. In fact, that is hindering your progress. You just need to keep showing up again and again, imperfectly. I really hope this resonated with you. If you've got any questions, please drop me a comment below. And if there's anything else you want to hear from me on, please do let me know. I am always open to your suggestions. I hope you have a wonderful weekend and I'll see you next time. Love you, bye.